Hi everyone, this is Leslie Seabrook here from Leslie's StampinTrix. I'm here with you today to show you a super great coloring stamp set called In the Moment. And I'm just loving coloring it with watercolors lately. So I'm sort of doing a little bit of a thing lately on watercoloring. So I'm just going to call it winter watercoloring. Anyways, this is the stamp set right here in the catalog. So this is the January to June mini catalog for 2022. And this stamp set called In the Moment is on page 57. And I've done a few different cards with it, sometimes with our watercolor pencils, sometimes with our blender pens or our blending markers. It's a very, very versatile stamp set, but I wanted to do a little bit of watercoloring with you today. And I don't know what the weather's like where you are. I hope the light in this room is bright enough. It's changing throughout the day. We have a bit of a snowfall here, but we're getting an enhanced lake effect. We're by Lake Ontario. So sometimes it gets a little bit dark out when the snow falls a little bit heavier, and then we get some bright sunshine. It's really quite beautiful, but it keeps changing. So I hope the light's okay for you. So if you happen to be watching, please take a moment and say hello. Tell me where you're from. Let me know if you have difficulty hearing or seeing or whatever, and I will try my best to accommodate. So today, as I said, I'm going to use this stamp set, but there is a couple of other stamp sets that I think are equally as fabulous to color, and they have this similar kind of line art. So the other couple of stamp sets are called, one is called Beautiful Moments, and it's on page 79 in the annual catalog. And there's another one called A Good Man, and it's on page 46 in the annual catalog. And of course, because it's celebration right now, we have all kinds of fabulous stamp sets for free, depending on the order that you place. And so one of them that I love is Catching Butterflies. There's Awesome Otters, Driving By, and Friendly Hello, which I think are all great for watercoloring. Or, as I said, use your Stampin' Blends markers, your watercolor pencils, but I'm going to work with this one today. And because I'm using watercolor, and I am going to, I'll just move my stuff around here as I'm talking. As I'm using watercoloring, last week I did a video on color embossing, and sorry, I know this glares a little bit. So the color embossing that I did last week allows you to have color to the paper, or on the paper, and then add your ink colors around it. So I wanted to have green leaves, but the stamp set, as I said, that I'm using today, In the Moment, I'm just going to use black, so I'll use StazOn. But I wanted to show you a couple of different papers here first, just so that you get a good idea. So last week I used, let's see if I can do a little combo here and hold them up to the camera if you can see. So last week I used our thick Whisper White. I wanted a really white background, and as I said, I wanted my image to be colored, and I wanted to watercolor it. So I did a color emboss technique, so you can go back and watch last week's video for that. But this paper is designed for light watercoloring. It is thicker, it is thick cardstock, so it still will, depending on the amount of water you put on it, it will pill up and break down a little bit, because it's not designed to really handle water. You can do a watercolor wash over it and light watercoloring, but if you really want to saturate your paper and get a lot of blending of color, then the best one to go for is this. And this is our Fluid 100 watercolor paper, and it comes in this size sheet, and you can tell hopefully by just me rubbing it here that the texture, the sound of it's a little bit different. So it's quite heavy weight paper. It has a lot of texture in it. When you look at it, you can see there's just this openness to the fibers, and so that allows the water to seep in and then of course blend your color. But the paper that I'm going to use today is called Shimmery White, and I'm going to try to get the shimmer color on there if you can see it, and it is available in our annual catalog as well. So I'll put the different numbers up when I do a post after this of the different papers that we have. But as I said, today I'm going to use the Shimmery White because you can stamp on it, you can blend your colors a little bit more, you can add a bit more water to it, and it has this subtle shimmer texture to it. So it handles the water a little bit better than the very thick cardstock that we have. So I'm just going to pull up my chair here and sit down. And here's a little trick I just was going to show you before I begin. Let's just see to make sure that I've got this all lined up okay here. A little trick that I have that I like to do when I'm using my Stamparatus, and you certainly don't need to use a Stamparatus if you don't have one, but I would say it's one of those really great go-to tools. So if you ever are looking for a tool to purchase that will really change your stamping game, I would highly recommend this one. So as you see, I have stamped the image here with the Stamparatus in the past, just because that's where I lined up the cardstock last time when I was doing it. But today I just decided I was going to put it down here. So I put these little markers here, just with ink, just a little pen mark to say where where I want to line up my paper. And the reason I do that is because if I want to do multiples, which is what the Stamparatus is fabulous for, then I know that I always lay my paper down here. So sorry, I know that maybe if I close that, it will give you a glare. So let me see if I can, yeah, okay. Wasn't sure if you were still in camera here. So the product that I'm using is called StaysOn, and it's a solvent-based ink. So it's perfect for watercoloring because it's basically opposite, right? It's the oil based ink, and then we're going to apply watercolor, so the two will not interact. And the reason I love the Stamparatus, as well as making multiples, is that you can reapply your ink. Just close the door, this little hinged plate here, close the door on the stamp, and get a very lovely dark crisp image. So last week when I was doing the colored emboss, I used the Stamparatus because I was changing the ink and the Versamark ink, and so I needed to keep the paper in position as I applied different ink. So the StaysOn product is fabulous. As I said, it comes with a reinker, so it looks like my pad needs a little bit of reinking because I'm not getting even coverage everywhere, but I think that that's pretty good. So I'm just going to pull this out of here, set it aside for a minute. But as I said in the beginning, StaysOn is a solvent-based ink, so you need to use the StaysOn cleaner. Hi, Kimberly. Nice to meet you. So this StaysOn cleaner is just an all-purpose cleaner for the solvent ink. So you just basically rub it onto your stamp, and you can see how it just breaks apart the ink. And then I usually use a paper towel just to dab off the little bit of extra that I have there. But it gets the ink off really nicely. It kind of is like, you know, turpentine or mineral spirits when you're using oil-based paints. So I'm just going to move in my Stampin' Mist Cleaner here. And the reason I love to use this one right after I use the solvent-based ink is because our Stampin' Mist conditions the stamp as well as it cleans the stamp. So it has like almost like a little Velcro brush texture to this black pad here. And oh, I'm not sure I'm in camera, sorry about that. So I just spray it on, move it around, and then move it around on the dry side, and the little fibers of this, like I said, it's almost like Velcro, get right into the stamp and into all the little line art imaging here. So it cleans your stamp off really, really well and conditions it at the same time. So I'm just going to set that aside, and then I'll move on to the watercoloring. So next thing that I will use, let me see if I'm in camera again, I keep shifting myself today, is our water painters. And I love our water painters. I've used them many times before. So if you watch any of my other videos, you might happen to see them. But they come 3 in a pack, and they have a little barrel inside. I was showing them last week as well, that you fill with water. And then when you're using them, you're squishing on this part, this barrel part, and it refills this brush with water. So it really helps you control the amount of water you have on your image. So as I said, if you're using that Fluid 100 watercolor paper, you can apply a real watercolor wash first, even with your brush, just with plain water, and then apply the color after. It's really awesome. So I'm going to start with Petal Pink here. If you don't have these colors, certainly use the colors that you have. I like Petal Pink for the flesh tone. It's sort of our lightest color that I can find, that I think it sort of has this little orangey look to it. Just wanting to make sure that I've got you in camera here. But you can, as I said, add a little bit more water and just get rid of that orangey look. And so I'm just gonna apply a little bit, and you can go back and apply a little bit more. I always do the rule of thumb of less is more. Start out with a little less color, because you can always add more. So it's pooling in the lid of my ink pad there, and I can either squish water right from the barrel of this water painter down into it, or I can pick up directly, right from the pigment area. So hopefully that is as even as possible. Next, I'm gonna do her hair with Soft Suede. And Soft Suede is one of these neat colors. It's a very true light brown. Sometimes I find, as soon as you start to add color to, or water to the colors, you can kind of see the individual colored pigments that make up that overall color. And so depending on the intensity of color, the amount of water that you've added, you can pick up other shades of color that you may not necessarily want in your image. So play around a little bit with different amounts of water in the palette here to see if you're getting different pigments coming through. I would say if Soft Suede lends itself to anything, it would be more of a green family of color, versus like reds. if that makes sense. So it's really interesting when you start to watercolor and you start to play with color, you really do see, you see the different pigments appearing. So good enough. That soft suede. Then I think I will use our Misty Moonlight because I wanted her to have sort of like denim jeans on. So you can just squeeze the barrel here and squeeze out a little bit of water, and cleans your brush, and then it allows you to create a little palette over here. As I said, I always sort of dab off just a titch, just to see what my color intensity is looking like before I put it onto the surface. So this shimmery white paper, as I said, is really forgiving. You can add different depths of color and you'll get a little bit of blending, and the ink will run a little bit. It just allows you a little bit of open time to move the ink around and disperse your color without sort of being a blob of color, because on regular cardstock, as you see it doesn't even move. It's a blob of color. Whereas on the shimmery white, it takes the water runs the pigment a little bit, if that makes sense. I really feel like I need to take a painter's watercoloring class so that I can get some of my terminology correct and describe it a little bit better. But I love Stampin' Up's artwork. It certainly allows me to just be an artist, just color in the lines. So just get the water up, or rinse that off from the blue, because I'm going to use So Saffron. Oop. As the ink color for the little cup here. And I know this is super light. It doesn't matter to me if it is darker or lighter. That's why I didn't sort of dab off initially. And then I think I'm going to use one of our in colors. This one's called Polished Pink for the cushion. But it's very intense color, so I want to see how it looks on a piece of scrap paper first. And again, as I said, sort of less is more, so I like to start out with a light color wash and then add in shades of color. And another demonstrator once used the wording, I think it's perfect. She says, follow the color me here lines. So these are the color me here lines. They're the natural lines that the artist has added to sort of give a little bit of dimension and depth to the artwork. And so if you enhance it with either, you know, if you happen to even just be using your blender, Stampin' Blends markers or watercoloring, you can add a little extra dark line there, and it really gives it a lot more dimension than just a flat color. And then I think I will use Flirty Flamingo for her shirt. Flirty Flamingo is a neat color. I used it last week on the flower stamp I was coloring. I love it because it sort of has a pink to orange coral color almost. So it's a really awesome color for a variety of projects. It's one I would highly recommend getting if you need a pink in your wardrobe of color. So Just again using these color me here lines as a way to get a little bit more depth of color. Make it look a little bit more realistic, hopefully. And then the bench that she's sitting on, again, I'm just loving mixing up the colors, but you use whatever you have. And as you can see, you could use the same color over and over, you know, to get different depths of color, so you don't have to have actual changes of color. You could just have different depths of color. I've seen some really neat watercoloring with just one or two colors. I just love using all the palette that I have for an image like this. So the other stamp sets that I was describing or telling you about from the annual catalog, Beautiful Moments and A Good Man, they're all similar drawings. So really great for perhaps a Mother's Day, maybe a Father's Day image. This stamp set I love because I love all the sentiments on it. So I will show you the stamp set in a few minutes and talk a little bit about that. Oh, I want to know what I wanted to do. Yeah, I won't right now. I'll just move on to Balmy Blue for the sky. So lots of people have their own preferences when it comes to blues for the sky. I think Pool Party is a fabulous color, but I do like Balmy Blue on this one just because of the other colors I think that I'm using. It just goes really nicely. Again, just different depths of color in and around the glass here to maybe show some shading. What was I going to say a second ago? Thought just left my brain. Oh, remember to when you're watercoloring to just, you know, be really casual about it. It's not going to be perfect. The water is going to take the color perhaps to areas that you don't really want, or make it a little bit darker in areas that you would maybe not prefer. But that's okay. You know, it's a handmade card, so don't worry about being perfect. I think that's why I love watercoloring, is because it's very forgiving. Every image is slightly different. You can't really go wrong. And even when you think you have it perfect, then when it dries, it will change its look again. You get different depths of color appearing as your project or as the piece dries. So there we go. That's it for the watercoloring. I'm just going to put the rest of the card together and show you a little bit about the stamp set. So I chose to just repeat the cards. I think I'll pull in one here that I used before, just because it's dried. You might want to just set this aside just to dry for a little bit before you glue it on just immediately. I chose to use Flirty Flamingo just to match her shirt here. So, you know, obviously the intensity is different, but there is a uniformity there with the color. And I love our grid paper because I can just sort of line up just fairly casually here, but get an idea of where I want it to be. With this one, I was sort of playing with the lines a little bit, if that makes sense. I wanted a few of these measurements to relate to one another. So, you know, in by 1/2 inch, down by 1/2 inch, in by 1/4 inch on either side. So I was sort of playing with a little bit of measuring here with this card design, but it's a really super simple one. So I just use our multi-purpose liquid glue. And as I said, I'm going to try to come in about 1/2 inch on each side and down by 1/2 inch. Just eyeball it a little bit. And then when I put this one on the other way, maybe it'll come, oops, down about 1/4 inch and hang over about 1/4 inch, give or take. Just to give a little bit of, I don't even know what you really call that, uniformity for the eye, I guess. So, very, very simple card base. And then I just decided to use our gray granite ribbon. So I stamped the You're in My Thoughts, which is a sentiment within the stamp set, with the Stamparatus, and I stamped it onto our shimmery white just because I wanted the two whites to match. And I put glue on the back of this first and let it dry for a few minutes. I don't know if you've used our multi-purpose liquid glue and tried that technique or not, but again, Meg Lovin will say, if you can see the glue, you have enough. But if you set it aside for a few minutes and just let it get a little bit clear, then your glue won't smush when you add it to the ribbon or wherever you're putting it down. But in this case, the ribbon is so tiny, so narrow, it's only about 1/4 inch, and this is just a little bit bigger than 1/4 inch as well. So I didn't want the glue to be smearing out here. So I just let it dry for a minute till it was sort of tacky and clear, and then I put dimensionals on the back just to pop it up a little bit. And again, just sort of playing maybe a little bit with the lines. Oops, my hands are jiggling here. See if I can get it straight, give or take. And then I will embellish it with just a couple of our really super basic jewels. These are our Rhinestone basic jewels. I'll pull that out just so that it doesn't glare. And I'm just going to place them wherever they sort of pop on, I guess. I love our little spatula here, the little spatula end, the take your pick tool. It really helps pick up the rhinestones. So there you have it. Super simple little card. Spend your time doing the watercoloring and then just put it together with a very simple design. So that's all there is to it. I just want to show you the stamp set really quickly because I didn't really chat with you too much about that. So I'll hold it up so that you can see it. You might have looked at the sentiments when I had the catalog out front, but at the beginning of the video, but You're in My Thoughts is the one that I used here. And then I love this one. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax. And you're always so good to others, be good to yourself too. So I just love the font, the mix of font within the sentiment, and I love, of course, the sayings. So I think it's a super stamp set, and I'll show you a couple of other cards made with it as well. I did do a video on this one because I was showcasing at the time our Friendly Hello Designer Series paper, which is down the side here. It's one of our free celebration items. So this one isn't watercolored. This one I used blending brushes, but you could use the exact same technique as I did today with the stays on and then watercoloring to create this one. I just was doing this super quickly one day, and so I was using the Stampin' blends. You can see the difference though in the skin tones here, right? Like look, obviously this person has white skin, but like it's very difficult to get a real, well, without coloring it perhaps, but to get a light flesh tone. But I do think you have a lot more control when you use the same color, petal pink, and you dilute it with water versus when it's in a blend. And I should tell you right now, one of the really cool things that's coming is it's actually available to us. If you're a demonstrator now, it's available to us. It's called Altogether Collection, I think. And within the collection, there's some natural tones to change skin tone colors. And so, oh, I should stop and just tell you about this card. So this one, again, it's just the same, same stamp set, you know, same sentiments from the same stamp set. I just colored this one with pencil crayons. I really wanted the lines in the book and on the dog because I wanted it to kind of look like fur, but I used a bit of a blender pen with our watercolor pencil crayons here. But again, you could use watercoloring and stays on and change the depth of color in things like those cushions and whatnot. So as I was saying, the Natural Tones Stampin' Blends collection is coming. It's available starting February the 1st, I believe, for customers. Demonstrators had the opportunity to order it in January. The collection itself includes a stamp, dies, paper, and these blends that I'm talking about. The blends are going to continue. They will show up in the next catalog from what I understand, but they will be sold just in individual packs. So, you know, a light and a dark in a pack. However, you can get them now as a set for less money. I think it might be the difference of $45 if you buy them in February to May versus $60 if you wait till the annual catalog. And so here's another card I just wanted to show you. This one I think is really cool. This is from Karen Duke. She's another demonstrator, and we did a demonstrator swap. So I'm going to try to show a variety of different cards from other demonstrators when I'm doing my lives here. So she actually stamped on some of our designer series paper, and then she cut it out. And then I think she used Stampin' Blends here to do the rest of the images. So I think that that's really a super cute way to do, to use this is called Heart and Home Designer Series paper, but to blend it with this stamp set. So as I said, I think the stamp set's just really super awesome. Oh, and I should tell you, in that All Together collection, as I said, there's a stamp set, dies, and black and white paper. I don't know if I told you that. So just before we go, I wanted to show you one other, a couple of cards that I think would be super great watercolored as well. So these were also swap cards that I received. This one was from Diana Langman, and this uses the Flowing Flowers. It's on page 36 in the January to June mini catalog. And just when you look at it, I just think it would be awesome for watercoloring because you could, I think she's actually got this on shimmery white and then added either a little bit of water or maybe the blender pen to just move the color a little bit. So that's why the shimmery white paper just works so well. I just think that's a really cool card. And then this one is from Lena Gersa. And again, just a fun fold. Oh, sorry, I'm holding it really close to the camera there. My apologies. She's done a really neat fun fold here, but again, you can see how the image has such a watercolor look to it. And one of the super great things about being a demonstrator truly is that you can join swaps and things like that. And because I certainly can't afford to buy all the stamp sets that I would love to buy for sure. So it's really great to be able to see some of the stamp sets that other people have that, you know, really spoke to them, that they pulled out and decided to buy. And then we get card ideas and whatnot from each other. So there's a few of my cards. I hope they're in camera okay for you. And if you would like more information, please visit me at www.stampintrix.ca. That's my blog, and I do try to post as often as I can, pretty much daily or 5 times a week right now is what I'm trying to do. So I'm often putting like tutorial sort of information up there, all the card measurements and whatnot. And this is my online store, https://leslieseabrook.stampinup.net. And if you place an order in the month of January and you use this host code, then I can send you a little thank you gift in the mail if your order is $60 or greater. And of course, it's celebration time, so you can get those free celebration sets that I was talking about. Please send me a message through either the StampinUp.net site or my StampinTrix.ca blog if you would like a catalog. I'm happy to send out catalogs to people in Canada that might want to shop with me. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else there is to share. Do you have any questions? Any thoughts or questions in regards to the watercoloring technique? If you choose to, I will put the extra details from the card on the description once I post this video. And yeah, I think that's about it. I hope that I've inspired you to try a bit of watercoloring. Have a super day. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you, Kim.